Good afternoon. My name is Maddie and I'm one of the OTs at the statewide MND service at Bethlehem Hospital. I'm here to talk about eye gaze technology and a framework that was developed with myself and my OT colleagues to help guide professionals who are considering if eye gaze is a pathway that they want to go down with their client. So allow me to introduce you to Jeff Woodrow. He's going to tell you about how eye gaze technology helped him. So an eye gaze refers to a method of accessing a computer device. You can see Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff Woodrow and I was diagnosed with MND in 2008.
So eye gaze is actually a camera that's plugged into a computer and it tracks the movement of an individual's eyes by picking up the reflection of its pupils.
I have been using eye gaze technology since early 2017. I use eye gaze as my primary source of communication as well as using it to operate my computer. I can pretty much do whatever I wish on the computer, including email, Facebook, Twitter, Word, etc., etc. In terms of quality of life, eye gaze technology enables me to communicate with those around me and the wider community. It also enables me to continue using my computer to accomplish a wide variety of activities using standard business software. If I did not have this technology, timely communication would be virtually impossible and I would be isolated and unable to live a fulfilling life.
So Jeff actually put this whole video together using his eye gaze system himself. And technology is such an important part of our lives these days, and remaining linked in with the online world is very important for some individuals. As Jeff outlined, eye gaze is not just used for people for communication assistance verbally, but it can also be used in many different ways through social media, games, photos, or controlling the environment, as the girls before highlighted. So it's not uncommon for myself and my colleagues to receive a phone call from a therapist in the community asking where they can get an eye gaze camera for their client with MND. It's important to remember that there are many reasons why other access methods may be important, and many people with MND may use multiple different access methods throughout their MND journey. A computer or a tablet can be accessed in many ways, and as an OT, it's my role to look at someone's movement and their ability and work out the most efficient and practical way to allow them to continue to use their technology. So we've got direct access, which refers to physically touching a device, whether it is with your finger or with a stylus. If hand function does continue to decline or becomes more fatiguing and unreliable, this is when we look at more indirect or hands-free technology. And eye gaze is just one type of indirect technology. So who might consider eye gaze? Generally someone who has limited movement of their upper limbs or is finding sustaining this movement difficult or fatiguing. They may be unable to use their regular computer or keyboard, or have difficulty using other things in their life. They might have difficulty, they may have been unsuccessful in trialling other access methods to access their technology, or they may be someone who may soon lose their function to allow them to continue to access their technology. When working with clients with MND, it is essential to remain a few steps ahead and be proactive. If a client has neck and hand weakness and is changing quickly, it may be strategic to start this discussion with the client earlier. So the client has more time to practice and learn this technology as their journey progresses. So just like prescribing a wheelchair, eye gaze is also a complex piece of equipment. It has many options and variables, and it therefore requires thorough assessment process. Consider your client, their diagnosis, prognosis, vision, fatigue, cognition, as well as prior computer knowledge, as well as their motivation. Set goals with them. What do they actually want to do? Consider their environment. Where are they going to use it? And what's their current level of function, and how is this likely to change? Does eye control require less effort than other access methods? And who will be around to support this system? Funding is often a barrier, and availability will vary depending on the funding system of where the client lives. Integrated systems can be very expensive, so ensure there is some plan around how this will be paid for. So there are a number of things that must be right to ensure a successful setup of the eye gaze system. The person and their positioning is so important for a good calibration, which is why mounting is important for this process. Without a good calibration, it can lead to further fatigue and frustration before you've even begun the process. It's also very important to consider what device they will be using. As an eye gaze is essentially a mouse replacement, it cannot be used with an iPad as there's no USB port to plug it into. There must also be a support person to assist with the charging of the device, safe storage, software updates, troubleshooting, and help with positioning and setup at home. This cannot be the sole responsibility of the therapist, and it's imperative to have a support team around to support the ongoing use of the eye gaze system. And we really want to build a system around the client and their needs. We don't want to fit a client to the system that we want them to use or what we have available to us at the time. So just on software. When considering what software to use, it's important to think about the person and what do they want to do with their eye gaze system. Is it for communication, social media, environmental control, or a combination? Choose software and devices that allow the person to continue what they want to do with the best layout and setting options possible. Also consider how they want to use their eye gaze to activate. Do they want to use a dwell? Do they want to use a switch or other options? Make sure this is also a consideration when choosing which software you're going to use, which will work best with them. Mounting and positioning is a key consideration when it comes to implementing eye gaze into someone's life. Where will they use it? What are they sitting in? What are they using it for? Does it need to be mobile? More likely, yes, if they are going to be using it for communication. Or does it need to be used in the recliner or in bed most of the time? You can see in the first picture here, we have a system perched on a table, as the client was still ambulant but required eye gaze for verbal communication. His wife was able to set up the system for him so he could use it out at the cafe or out on his deck at home. The boxes are there to boost up the height of the eye gaze camera so we could get a good calibration. And that it was a portable unit, so they were able to use it anywhere they went. So once an eye gaze system has been implemented, we must do extensive training with the individual and their support team to ensure that the system continues to work and is updated as required. Settings may need to be changed as the client becomes faster and more proficient in using their device. If the client's ability to use the eye gaze changes in the future, reassessment may be required to determine if eye gaze is still the best access method for them. It's so important to continue to evaluate the use of these systems, as we know that people with MND's functions do change over time. And it's really important to look at tech backup options as well, if they are using it for communication. So here's a diagram that sums up the process which I've just been through. So we come to our first case study with Narelle. So Narelle is a 47-year-old lady, and she's got bulb onset MND. So currently she's using her iPad to access her communication app, but she also uses it for emails and to YouTube things as well, and also look up ebooks. So as an OT, I looked at her head positioning and her posture. She does use a wheelchair, and she is starting to get some neck weakness and pain as well. We also looked at her hand function, and it was just becoming too fatiguing for her to directly access her iPad now. So we trialled a few things. We looked at hands-free options. We trialled a Q-Hard gyroscopic mouse. And while she was able to use this, because of her neck pain, it wasn't a viable option for long-term use, particularly as she did need to use it for communication. So then we trialled various eye gaze cameras, and they worked really well for her. So once we got that process underway, we then looked at software and different device options and mounting that she needed to use it within her own life. So she didn't need a heavy, robust system with an extra large battery. Environmental control wasn't a goal for her. What she needed was a lightweight system that was able to be mounted, that she could use her communication software on it, able to be used with an eye gaze camera, and she could still access the internet proficiently. So we looked at it, we decided to go with a small eye gaze camera and a Surface Pro tablet with a bracket holder. Her communication software was on there. And we looked at both a rolling mount to use in her bed and recliner, as well as a wheelchair mount. Now, we did work closely with the speech pathologist with this, as it was for communication as well. So, once we had the system funded, we had it sent to us in the clinic and we set it up so it was personalised for what she wanted to do, and it was easy for her to access. So, once it was set up, Narelle attended the clinic, and myself and the speech pathologist worked together to complete the training and set up with her. The speech pathologist looked at setting up the communication software to allow her to personalise her voice to what she wanted and the set out of the keyboards. And I looked at her use of computer control within the communication software, as well as setting up relevant apps and educating the family on how to set up the mounting. So the family were there at the appointment, so they got all of that education as well, so they were able to take it home and set it up within their own home environment. So we regularly monitored her use of the system through the clinic. As mentioned before, the speech pathologist made sure that there was a low-tech option as a backup for her communication, as technology does fail us. The family were able to do ongoing troubleshooting and problem solving as the issues arise, and we were here in the clinic for them to get in touch with to help sort out these issues. Moving on, we've got Barry here. So Barry has flail arm MND, and he lives at home with his wife. His speech is still intact. He's walking with no aids at the moment. But because of his flail arm MND, he's not able to use his desktop computer and mouse anymore. It's becoming very difficult and fatiguing for him. But all he really wants to do is his emails and surf the net. So we trialled various different options. Again, we looked at a Kuha head mouse with a dual click. And while he had quite good head movement and he didn't get any pain in his neck, he wasn't really able to coordinate the head movement with the click very well, and it became too frustrating for him. So then we trialled eye gaze as well, and we trialled eye gaze, and he took to using the gaze technology well, but he still couldn't really time the click with the dwell software that we had on the computer. So then we looked to switch activation as well, which he quite liked. He also didn't need communication software, so we decided to go with Windows Control. So you can see him now. He's using a buddy button on his lap, which he is able to activate with a small movement in his fingers, which he does have. And we've got a Surface Pro tablet with a small eye gaze camera perched on an overchair table. He's sitting in a recliner, and the system doesn't need to be mobile because he's only using it for computer access. This setup he could easily replicate at home. So he's using it quite well there. He's able to push the table away with his feet and stand up out of his chair as needed if he needs to go elsewhere in his home. So we loaned this device to Barry as due to funding constraints, he had to save up his home care package to fund his own system. And we're lucky enough to have our own loan pool at Bethlehem where we were able to do that. So with evaluation, again, we followed up through our clinic with email contact. And this man actually now uses a switch with his foot as he has lost the movement in his fingers. With evaluation and following up, if he does start to lose his voice and does need communication, we'll work with the speech pathologist to add communication software onto his tablet. As well as that, if his mobility does continue to decline as well, and he does need to rely on a wheelchair in the future, we can look at mounting for that as well. So benefits. When successful, eye gaze improves quality of life. People with MND can stay connected and regain control. It's important not to push eye gaze systems on people who are not motivated or keen. Remember, not everyone needs or wants an eye gaze system just because they have MND. The data backs up what we see in the clinic as well. When the above steps are followed and implementation is successful, an eye gaze camera can have incredible impact in life of a person with MND. Literature shows that eye gaze improves quality of life and reduces care burden. Studies also support our experience that a timely referral and access to funding and resources remain critical issues for us as clinicians. This, again, emphasises the need to be proactive. So some take-home points. Eye gaze is just one option for accessing a device, and it can be used for communication, for leisure, for computer access, or environmental control. Therapists should be proactive in their assessment of alternative computer access options, and early implementation shows better outcomes. Positioning of the camera is so important for successful eye gaze use, and ongoing assessment and monitoring is required as the disease progresses. What works now may not work in 6 months' time. When successful, eye gaze can have a real positive impact on a person's life with MND. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Has anybody got any questions for Maddie? Yes, just at the front here.
Thank you for the presentation. I was just curious about the amount of time. I know it varies according to device for implementation and what type of support that you have, because as more people want more apps, more access, et cetera, it can be very lengthy, and I was just curious about time consideration.
Yep, no, so definitely time is such an important thing. We spend a lot of time setting up these devices. So when we are looking at implementing this, with someone, we usually say, choose the 3 most important things that you want to do, and then we can look at them. And then as they, learn the system and have it set up through the clinic, we do follow up, okay, what else do you want to do? We can add that on. So it does take time, but I think it's well worthwhile. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.